Take a look at the person handing you your coffee tomorrow morning. Look at their hands. They aren't the hands of a teenager starting their first job. They are the hands of a 74-year-old woman named Linda. She worked 35 years as a mid-level administrator. She did everything the brochures told her to do. She contributed to her 401k. She paid off her mortgage. She stayed out of credit card debt. And yet, here she is in the summer of 2026, standing on her feet for 8 hours a day because her property taxes just jumped another 20% and her Medicare supplement plan now costs more than her first car. The American retirement dream isn't just dying. For the bottom 80% of the population, it is already dead. We just haven't had the funeral yet. In 1996, 30 years ago, the math of life was simple. You worked, you saved, and you stopped. A modest home cost about 3 times the average annual salary. Today, in 2026, that same home costs nearly 10 times the median household income. The ladder hasn't just been pulled up, it's been set on fire. We are living through the most significant wealth transfer in human history, but it's moving in the wrong direction. It's moving from the pockets of those who labor to the ledgers of those who own. The numbers are devastating. In 2026, the median retirement account balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 is less than $75,000. In a world where a basic one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood now averages $2,800 a month, $75,000 isn't a retirement fund. It's a countdown clock to homelessness. Every 90 seconds, another American realizes they've been sold a lie. The lie was called the 401k revolution. Back in the late 70s, companies realized that pensions, guaranteed checks for life, were too expensive. They shifted the risk to you. They told you that you were the captain of your own ship. But they didn't tell you the ship was made of cardboard and the sea was full of sharks. Wall Street fees, market volatility, and the sheer impossibility of outsaving 10% annual inflation on basic necessities have left a generation stranded. Think about Mark. Mark is 62. He lives in a suburb of Atlanta. In 2019, he thought he was set. He had $500,000 in his Vanguard account. He felt rich. Then 2022 happened. Then the stagflation of 2024 and 2025 hit. Today, in 2026, Mark's $500,000 has the purchasing power of what $200,000 did when he started his career. His grocery bill has tripled. His electricity bill has doubled. Every time he looks at his account, he doesn't see freedom. He sees a looming disaster. He's now looking for remote data entry jobs because his body can't handle the warehouse work he used to do. This is the unretirement trend. It's a fancy word the media uses to make working until you drop sound like a personal choice. It isn't a choice. It's a hostage situation. The invisible enemy in this story isn't just inflation. It's the structural shift in how we value human life. We have moved from a society that rewards loyalty and longevity to one that extracts every last drop of productivity until the machine breaks. In 1990, a couple could retire comfortably on $1 million. In 2026, financial advisors are quietly telling clients that $3 million is the new floor. But how does a teacher, a nurse, or a mechanic save $3 million? They don't. They can't. The math literally does not work. The emotional weight of this realization is paralyzing. It starts as a quiet anxiety in your late 30s. It turns into a cold sweat in your 50s. By 60, it's a constant low-grade panic. You see the elderly man bagging your groceries, and for a split second, you see your own future. You see the reflection of a society that has decided that if you aren't producing, you don't matter. Let's talk about the healthcare trap. This is the nuclear reveal that most people ignore until it's too late. Even if you manage to pay off your house, even if you have a decent nest egg, one major medical event in 2026 can wipe out 40 years of savings in 40 days. The cost of long-term care has exploded. A semi-private room in a nursing home now averages over $12,000 a month. That is $144,000 a year. If you and your spouse both need care, you're looking at nearly $300,000 annually. Unless you're in the top 1%, you are one stroke or one fall away from total financial liquidation. We grew up with the imagery of the golden years. Golf courses, RV trips across the country, and spoiling the grandkids. That imagery was based on a very specific window of history. Post-World War II stability that no longer exists. We are regressing to a pre-industrial reality where people worked until their physical bodies failed, and then they relied on the charity of their children. But there's a catch. The children are broke too. The younger generation, the millennials and Gen Z, are facing their own 2026 nightmare. They are carrying record-breaking student debt while trying to buy homes at peak bubble prices. They can't support their parents because they can barely support themselves. This safety net is actually a spider web, and we are all getting caught in it. Social Security was never meant to be a full retirement plan. It was meant to be a floor. But in 2026, with the trust fund exhaustion dates looming closer and the cost of living adjustments failing to keep pace with the real price of eggs, meat, and rent, that floor is rotting through. For millions, Social Security is the only thing standing between them and the street, and that floor is shaking. It's time for some brutal honesty. The system didn't break by accident. It was engineered to function exactly like this. Asset inflation benefits those who already own assets, the wealthy and the institutional investors. For everyone else, it's a tax on existence. Every time the stock market hits a new high in 2026, it often means the cost of your future has just gone up. There is a profound nostalgia for a time we barely remember, a time when a single income could support a family, buy a home, and guarantee a dignified old age. That world is a ghost. In its place, we have a high-speed treadmill that never stops. We are told to side hustle, to invest in crypto, to be our own CEOs. These are just distractions from the fact that the fundamental contract of the American middle class has been torn up and thrown away. The pressure is building. You feel it every time you check your bank balance. You feel it when you see the price of a modest dinner out. You feel it when you realize that retirement has become a luxury brand, like a Ferrari or a private jet. It's something you see other people having, but you know it's not for you. So, what is the reality of 2026? The reality is a 70-year-old man driving for a rideshare app at 2 a.m. because his wife's heart medication went up in price. The reality is a grandmother living in her daughter's basement, not because she wants to, but because her pension was frozen a decade ago. The reality is a generation of workers who are tired, physically, mentally, and spiritually tired, who realize the finish line has been moved 10 miles back just as they were about to cross it. We have to stop pretending this is a personal failing. It isn't because you didn't save enough or because you bought too many lattes. It's because the cost of basic survival has been financialized and sold to the highest bidder. The invisible enemy is a system that views human beings as batteries, to be used until they are drained and then replaced. As we move further into 2026, the mask is falling off. The retirement crisis isn't a future problem. It's a current catastrophe. We are witnessing the birth of a new class of working age poor. People who did everything right, yet ended up with nothing. The clock is ticking louder than ever. You can hear it in the silence of an empty office at 7 p.m. where a 65-year-old janitor is just starting his shift. You can hear it in the rustle of a plastic bag as a retired teacher picks up a shift at a grocery store. The paycheck got bigger over the years, sure, but the life behind it, The life behind it got smaller and smaller until there was nothing left but the grind. The American dream used to end with a gold watch and a sunset. In 2026, it ends with a clock in and a fluorescent light. We didn't get lazy. We got robbed. And the hardest part to admit is that for most of us, there is no way out. The only thing left to do is keep walking, keep working, and hope that the machine doesn't break before we do. Disclaimer: this is not financial advice. The strategies discussed in this documentary are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor or tax professional before making significant investment decisions.